So now they are believing that Bain and Amora are possessed by the devil. They believe now the only way forward is to have an exorcism performed on baby Amora. And unfortunately, this is where the details of this absolutely devastating, horrific crime are going to take place.
Your phone is not helping her at all. If he's not going to do it, you can put the phone down and go get that baby and get it to the phone.
So that was the call that Blaine Milam made, and he made that call on the 2nd of December 2008 at precisely 10:37 a.m. So when this call was made, obviously, you would get the police going out, etc, etc. So Jessica and Blaine were interviewed separately. They were both put into a police vehicle, and these interviews were actually recorded. So there is recordings online of the conversations that were had. And they both claim that they had left baby Amora in the house whilst they were going out to look at a property that they were wanting to move their trailer to. Then they said they were away for about an hour to an hour and a half to do this. So that's what story they gave to the police. But something just didn't add up. The accounts were slightly different, the police say. They were slightly different, so then they became a little bit suspicious around this. So it was actually later found out that Jessica and Blaine were actually at a pawn shop, and they were at the pawn shop to sell some tools. So I think it was a chainsaw they were off to sell to get some cash. But with this cash, what they actually did was they went to a garage afterwards, refueled the car and bought cigarettes. And that's when they returned and made this telephone call to 911. Now, I'd just like to put my own little words in here, because regardless of where you went, I'm sorry, but you've left your baby in the house. You left your 13-month-old baby in the house alone while you say you went to look at a property. Why would you leave your 13-month-old baby in the house alone without anybody there? Like, come on, that's neglect at its finest. Do you know what I mean? Like, what the actual hell? What the actual hell? And anyway, it was later found out that they weren't where they said they were. They were at a pawn shop. They were selling their chainsaw for cash. And they needed this cash because they wanted to use it to hire a priest or just someone that could perform this exorcism on baby Amora. But what they did was, they actually went to a garage, refueled their car and bought cigarettes. Come on, these folk just ain't right. I don't understand it. Leaving your baby at 13 months old. So, Blaine and Jessica's story is what they say it is, that they were out for about an hour to an hour and a half looking at this property. And when they came back, they couldn't find Amora. They were searching the house for her. They couldn't find her. And then that's where they made the discovery of baby Amora in a hole in his mother's trailer's bathroom. So they found her body, lifeless body, and that's when they made this call. it's really, really sad story. I mean, it's really, really hard to sort of tell, but I think those two evil bastards' faces need to be put out there to show just how evil these people are. So I'm going to continue with this story, but let me just please warn you now that the details that you're going to hear about what happened to little baby Amora are really sickening. They are really, really sickening, and if you can't bear to listen to that kind of stuff, then I really would suggest not going any further with this story, because it really, really is. It's major. So when police arrive on the scene and make the place a crime scene, obviously because there's a deceased child, it looks as if there's been a break-in, and there is like blood splattered all over the place. And what really had happened there was Bain and Jessica staged this whole break-in thing, and they actually used fake blood. Do you know, like the stuff you get for Halloween, the fake blood you get for Halloween? They put that around so that it would throw them off the scent of themselves. So they made it look like a break-in and put fake blood around the place. I mean, why would you even think that fake Halloween blood would work? Like, that just wouldn't even come up in like DNA tests. It's fake blood. But I don't understand. And the couple go on to make up a few other stories as well. So he says when he came in, she had a blood ring round her mouth. It looked as if she'd been biting on the insulation. They also claimed that they'd been in a car accident the day before. And they also claimed that the dog had bitten her, like a dog had attacked her. So these were excuses that they came up with to tell. Anyway, it does not take long for the police to work out that Bain and Jessica are just lying. They're lying about everything, so they are quickly indicted on capital murder charges. So I'm now going to go on and I'm going to tell you the things that the police found at the crime scene. Okay, so above me up there is the picture of the crime scene. This is where baby Amora was actually found. She was had been taken out of this bathroom hole in the ground and put onto the bedroom floor by Bain and Jessica. So I'm actually going to go through the actual things that were found at the crime scene. Now I'm referring to my notes because I don't want to miss anything out, anything serious out. So officers did obtain search warrants for the property. I do believe Bain actually said that they could have access, but they did need to do this official, and they obtained search warrants. So in the property they found blood. They found blood splatter, bloody bedding, baby clothes, diapers and wipes. They found a tube of Astroglide lubricant, a pair of jeans with bloodstains on the lap. All items were tested positive for Amora's DNA. So police, when they see baby Amora, believe that she suffered with blunt force trauma to the head, and they believe that the weapon used for this could have potentially been a hammer. And in an interview with Jessica, she does say to the police, now I'm going to quote this, Bain came back outside and I said, "Why did you run in the house saying Amora for?" And he said, "God told me she got that hammer and was hitting herself in the head. And those marks on her head was, I think, from that hammer where she was hitting herself, or that demon was hitting herself on the head." I was like, there's got to be something else we can do. I was like, we can get money. We can go to our minister and see if he can help, or go find a priest somewhere if, we can make payments on them, doing an exorcism or something. See if we can just do anything. There's got to be another way. And he said, God said it was too late. And I was like, what do you mean it's too late? And he was crying while he was saying and everything. He was like, because if she doesn't go to heaven now, she will live her life with Satan having her soul, you know, end quote. So they actually tried to blame baby Amora for hitting herself on the head with a hammer, believing it was a demon that was doing it. So that was the account that Jessica gave to the police. That baby Amora, 13 months old, has killed herself by hitting herself in the head with a hammer. Now, I really don't see how a 13-month-old baby, even with a hammer, would be able to use such force to kill herself with it. It's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous that they even tried to put this blame on their own child. Well, it's not even Blaine's child, it's his stepchild. But to put the blame on your own child is just sickening. It's absolutely sickening. And then it transpires that Bain has a conversation with his sister. And in this conversation, he is saying, you need to get back to this trailer somehow, because there's some evidence underneath it. You need to get it. And the aunt finds out about this. So she makes a phone call to the police. And you know what? Good for her. Because you find out in some stories that nobody makes these calls. So good for her. So obviously now the police are going to go and investigate underneath this trailer. And as the police actually crawl under this trailer, this is what they find. They find a pipe wrench in a plastic bag, along with Amora's diaper and wipes that were collected earlier from the crime scene. And an analysis later on would actually discover that remnants of the Astroglide lubricant were also found on this pipe wrench. The police also noted that Jessica and Bain did not have a car seat in their actual car, but actually found one lying face down on the driveway, like the gravel and the mud. And they believe that this was sort of like a testament to Amora is never getting back in the car, you know, as if they knew that they would not need this car seat again, sort of thing. So the police now have this overwhelming evidence against the pair. And so yes, they are indicted on capital murder charges, to which they both plead not guilty. And I really believe that that's just another slap to Amora's face. It's absolutely ridiculous. Just take responsibility for your actions. For fuck's sake, that was your child. Fucking hell, it just makes me so sick. So Blaine's trial was to begin on the 3rd of May 2010. Now bearing in mind this crime was committed in 2008. Now the reason it took so long to go to trial is because they had to change the venue of this trial. So basically the crime was committed in Ross County and it got moved to Montgomery County, and that's 19 hours and 12 minutes away, like a drive. So it's really, really, really far away. This is because if it had happened where it happened, he would not have received a fair trial, and that could later have resulted in a retrial. So that's why they did that. So the trial began, and this is what was described as the injuries to baby Amora in the trial. This is really, really hard to listen to. It's going to be hard to read, and viewer discretion is really advised at this point. So in the trial, the medical examiner gave Amora's cause of death as homicidal violence due to the blunt force trauma and possible strangulation. Her injuries included facial abrasions and bruises to the extent that it looked like one big injury, 24 human bite marks, bruises, scrapes and abrasions from head to toe, bleeding underneath the scalp, extensive fracturing to the back of the skull, a laceration to the brain as well as swelling, bleeding around the optic nerves, bleeding in the eyes and around the jugular vein. spiral fractures to the right arm and leg consistent with twisting. So both the right arm and leg were broken, but this was done in a way that was twisted, like, so they twisted like that. "18 rib fractures, a tear to the liver, and extensive injury to the genitals." So he hadn't penetrated her, but he had used an object, and they believe that it was the pipe wrench thing that they found with the lubricant thing on it, if you remember me saying so. And he was not able to say what injury ultimately caused her death, because any single one of those injuries could have been fatal. So during the trial, those were all the things that had happened to her. And ultimately, Bain Milam was found guilty on charges of capital murder, and he was actually sentenced to death. So he's been put on death row. Then Jessica Carson's trial took place 1 year after Bain's trial. And in the trial, she tried to blame Bain for being very abusive, very controlling of her, and just sort of any excuse that diminished her of any responsibility for this. So all the blame was put on Bain from her side, and she said at this point that Bain was committing an exorcism on baby Amora. So this is what this whole story boils down to, is that obviously they thought that she was possessed by the devil, and Bain went and committed an exorcism on her himself. So Jessica was also found guilty of capital murder, and she was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. So Bain's on death row, and Jessica is now going to serve the rest of her life behind bars. So it is said that the defence tried to argue for Bain that he could have been experiencing some sort of psychosis because of his meth addiction, and that this could have played a part in why he was believing this devil was inside baby Amora. And they also tried to argue that Jessica was experiencing postpartum psychosis, and that's something that you can get after having a child, very different from the baby blues, a serious mental illness, and should be treated as a medical emergency. So it was said that at some point during this relationship, Jessica did start to change, like from an energetic, outgoing girl to sort of like dark and depressed, not energetic anymore, not wanting to socialise, not wanting to mix. So, you know, it's possible, but it does say that this condition starts within weeks of giving birth. And even with treatment, it can last for months, even years. But I'm not sure there, because if she had it and hadn't got treated, was it just getting worse and worse and worse, to the point where she did believe that the devil was in her child? So Bain was sentenced to death by lethal injection, and his death date was set for the 21st of January 2021. So obviously we're in January 2022 at the minute. And actually Bain was granted a stay of execution, and he was granted this literally days before he was due to be executed. The reason being is because they're now challenging his mental competency. So they're saying that they don't even know if he is aware of how serious this crime that he's committed is. Because do remember that his mother said he didn't really mature beyond the age of 12. So they're now investigating that, and it is very possible that he will be given a life sentence instead of the death penalty. Personally, I don't believe in the death penalty, but for certain crimes that are, you know, proven beyond a reasonable doubt, proven beyond it, then you deserve it. I just don't agree with the death penalty because sometimes there's a lot of miscarriages of justice and people that are innocent are being put to death, and I can't stand that. But in this case, Bain is obviously the one that's committed this crime, and there's no evidence suggesting that he didn't, you know. He did do this, and he deserves everything that's coming to him, regardless of his mental state. He's her as well, the mother. Both of them just cruel, cruel, cruel people. And ultimately, this is all about this baby Amora. This is why I wanted to share the story, to get their two faces out, to show the evilness, and then to share this beautiful baby with you that, you know, tragically lost her life at 13 months old. And this all happened within such a short period. So basically, Jessica meets Bain in January of 2008. And then by December 2008, this has happened. And she's allowed this Bain that's a paedophile to live in her house with her child. I mean, what kind of a mother does that? What kind of a mother would even consider having a convicted paedophile living in the house with your children? I mean, you mustn't be right in the head to allow something like that. You know, you just, I just really don't understand that. I can't comprehend that. I really can, and I'm sure there's lots of others out there that feel the exact same way as I do. And, you know, this story is just so, so, so sad. And the cruelty, the violence, it breaks my heart. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and, you know, just let me know your thoughts on this case. Poor baby Amora, honestly.